Okay, we're going to continue with Federalist 4, Part 4, but let me just remind you, please, if you're new to American history, I suggest before starting on the Federalist Papers, or even at the same time that you're watching these videos, please make sure that you watch videos like this one. PBS series called Liberty. It's on the American Revolution. It will do a lot of the fancy things that I cannot do with my little phone and with what I have available. It's a good series. Like the sixth part, part 6, tells you about what led to the writing of this Constitution. So these are really helpful. This one, and I'll show you. There are 2 other ones, and they should be available. One of them is called The Revolutionary War. It was done by the Learning Channel in 1995. It was narrated by Charles Kuralt. And there is another one, History Channel's American Revolution, or the Founding Fathers or Founding Brothers. Definitely watch these. These are really helpful. It gives you a big picture. It shows you, it's got nice maps, and there are lots of interviews with historians. I recommend that you watch those if you're not really familiar with American history. They're going to be watching us. They're going to be challenged. So it says, keep that in mind. Again, another reason for us to create a union. We can be real strong and definitely make our future better. Okay, the people of America are aware that inducements to war may arise out of these circumstances, as well as from others not so obvious at present, and that whatever such inducements may find fit time and opportunity for operations, pretenses to color and justify them will not be wanting. Wisely, therefore, do they consider union and a good national government as necessary to put and keep them in such a situation as, instead of inviting war, will tend to repress and discourage it. That situation consists in the best possible state of defense and necessarily depends on the government, the arms, and the resources of the country. So he says, with everything that we've talked about so far, it's easy to see that sooner or later, whether we want it or not, there will be a circumstance that somebody will challenge us, would want to see if we are ready to fight for our interests. They don't want to see us strong. They'd rather see us weak now. And he doesn't say it here, but remember, establishment of the American Republic is the first serious try at establishing a republic, a real republic on this planet, especially one this size. So the monarchies that were powerful at the time, and everywhere you had either monarchs, absolute monarchs, tyrants running the show. For them to see a republic try to stand up, actually get established, that might be a model, might be an example for the rest of the world, that was the worst thing to them. They did not want that. So, American people, beware. There are all these governments out there that don't want you to do well. Wisely, therefore, do they consider union and a good national government as necessary to put and keep them in such a situation as, instead of inviting war, will tend to repress and discourage it. So if we get strong enough, if we establish this union, we're not going to invite wars. We're not going to look so weak that the powerful states will say, well, there is a weak state over there. Let us just go plunder. Let us go take their resources. Let us just make them our puppets. She says, we are not going to invite war because we're going to be a union and be strong. And all of this depends on whether we can establish a fine union, fine government, so that these states can work together against the common enemy, against the common challenge. Okay, now I go to my next paragraph. As the safety of the whole is the interest of the whole, and cannot be provided for without government, either one or more or many, let us inquire whether one good government is not, relative to the object in question, more competent than any other given number. So he says, we're going to study, we're going to talk about this. Since we want the government to be at first, and most importantly, to be our defense against aggression from others, we're going to talk about to see whether one would be good, one government, a union would be good, or whether 13 would be good if we don't unite, or maybe 3 or 4. Let's say we create confederacies. 3 or 4 states confederate together and form a nation. He says we're going to decide and see which one is best for our future. And we'll talk about it, he says, here pretty soon. Okay, I'll stop reading Federalist 4 now, and for a couple of minutes, just remind you that this blue area here was called Northwest Territory, was right north of Ohio River. Remember, this is the Ohio River. And one of the first things they did was in 1787, right during when the Constitutional Convention was going on, right around that time, they wrote an ordinance, almost like a little charter, a mini constitution, a mini charter for this area. And one of the important things that they did was not to allow slavery in this area. And we will see that it will have influences, some sort of influence in American history. We will talk about that as we go on. Yeah, at that time, this area was called Northwest because no American, I should say, resided on this side. So this would have been Northwest. But now they call this area United States Midwest. So whenever you hear the word Midwestern states, they're talking about states that are formed right around here. This yellow patch you see right here, it says VT on it. This is the this is going to be the state of Vermont. Vermont right here, right next to New Hampshire. Oh, well, I mentioned the Northwest Ordinance. At that time, they started talking about how to allow the future territories to get organized after people settle in them. And after they get to a certain number of people living in them, this population inside the territory, they can organize themselves. And they'll be called organized territory. They'll have charters, and the Congress will appoint a governor for them for a while. So Congress is still in charge. But eventually what they can do is they write a constitution, as long as it's a Republican form of constitution, Republican form of government, they can ask Congress to allow them to enter into the Union as a state, as a new state. And one of the most important things that these guys did, a feature of American Constitution that's very important for you to know, that when these new states entered the Union, they entered as equals, not as secondary or third-tier states. So the minute they entered, they would get 2 senators, and depending on the population, they would get certain number of members to the House of Representatives. So that's very important. For them to make this union work, the new states would enter as equals, not as second class or third class states. So keep that in mind, and we'll talk more about Federalist 4.